Hey folks, welcome back to another review with yours truly, Sam Healey. Today we're going to be talking about the A.R.T project, A.R.T project from the Up. Now, you might be thinking, why is Sam doing this? Doesn't he know that the big three already did this? Camilla, Z, and Tom? Yes, I did. I actually watched the video, and it made me want to do a review of it even more. So let's get down to the table, shall we? So here is the A.R.T project. A.R.T stands for the A.R.T Rescue Team, and so you as the players are going to be taking on the role of the A.R.T Rescue Team, and we are working against the terrorist organization known as the White Hand. They are stealing priceless and precious works of art from museums and individuals alike, and we are tasked with reclaiming those pieces of art and getting them back into the hands of their rightful owners. The game will progress in such a way in that as you're using cards in the deck, you're going to eventually reach this card right here. This will denote that the current round is the last round of the game, and then at the end of the round, if you have not won, you have lost. So, how do you win? Well, you have to reclaim 7 pieces of art from the hand, and once you've done that, you've won the game. There's also 3 other ways that you can lose. If all of the hand agents make their way onto the board at some point in the game, that will be the end of the game. You will have lost. If one person loses all of their hit points, you immediately lose. Also, if you have 3 cities that are locked down and you have to lock down a 4th, you lose. Each round is divided up into 4 different phases. You have the missions phase, where all the players are going to be drawing 2 cards each, and all of the players will be playing 1 card and discarding 1 card. Then you move on to the movement phase, where you can determine where the players are going to move, how far they're going to move, if they're going to stay put, and all that kind of stuff. And then you go to the fight phase, where if you are in a place where you have the hand agents, you can choose to fight them or not fight them, but in the fight phase is where the dice are rolled and you can determine whether you've won or lost those battles. And then finally, you have an end of round phase where the cities are checked to see if they have 5 or more agents in them, and if they do, that's how those locked city tokens will come out onto the board. In the missions phase, each player is going to have 2 cards in their hand. They'll draw 2 at the start of the phase, and then they will have to play 1 and discard the other one. There's no turn order, however, in this game whatsoever. You can determine through conversation amongst the players who plays their cards and in what order. There is no turn order in the game. So, card anatomy is such that the red X means that you have to get rid of these resources in order to play the card. Then, the second row here denotes how many white hand agents are going to come out onto the board on cities that match the symbol that's displayed. This card, however, you don't have to put any hand agents on the board, so that's a pretty cool thing. The third row down here is resources that you're going to get back. All of the resources go into and out of a communal pool that's on the table. However, hearts are a little bit different. If you have to spend hearts in order to play a card, then they have to come from your character. But if you get hearts back, they can come back to your character or they can be given to anybody else. And if you get multiple hearts back, you can also split them up. But all of the other resources come to and go out of this communal pool represented by the minivan. The last part of the card down here at the bottom simply represents the public information that's on the back side of the card so that the person who's looking at this side can see all of the information that the card has to offer. Now, the important part of the missions phase is that you can describe the cards in absolute detail to your other players, but you can never just show them your cards. You have to communicate. And this is an important part of the round because if we played with all of the information face up, our friendly neighborhood alpha players are simply going to say, okay, everybody, I know what we have to do, just follow my lead. So the game is designed to try to battle against that, and it fosters communication rather than somebody just telling everybody else what to do. So during the missions phase, you might be saying things like, one of my cards we have to lose 2 guns. It's only going to put one guy out on the board, one bad guy, but it's going to give us a fuel and a heart. My other card is going to cost us a fuel and a heart, though, and we don't have to put any white hand agents out, and we get a walkie-talkie back. Plus, they'll be able to see on the other side of the card the clues, and we'll talk about clues in just a few moments. So as you're talking about those things, you might find that one person's card is going to give you the resources that you have to spend in order to play your card. Or maybe one of your cards will do the same thing for them. And that's how you kind of determine what might be the best way or the best order to play your cards in. Once you play one of your cards, you always go from top to bottom. So I would have to lose 2 guns first, then I would place one of the hand agents out on the city that matches the book symbol. So let's go ahead and lose those 2 guns as well. And then we would actually get a fuel and I would get a heart. So let's just say I'm playing the yellow character over here. Now, I could take the heart or I could give it to somebody else. Maybe somebody else has a card like this one that requires a heart to pay. And that's the kind of information that can be shared during the missions phase. Once I've completed all 3 rows, we'll turn it over and it will go into a clue pile that is also communal. And these clues, as we continue playing cards down into it, will lead us in the direction of where these packages are going to be showing up. Once you have 3 of the same symbol out there, those cards will immediately trigger out of the clue track and a package will come into the city that matches the symbol. These that didn't get triggered stay in the clue track until they are triggered by another set coming out. All of the players' pawns start in the city that has the red flag in it on the map. And during the movement phase is where you'll determine who's going to stay put and who might be moving around and so forth and so on. When you move, you have to spend 1 fuel for 1 pawn to move from one city along a dotted line to an adjacent city. If he wants to move twice, then he would have to spend 2 fuel to do that. So let's say that we wanted a bunch of people to come down here and fight for that. Then we would have to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, before we move on, there's one thing that we need to talk about. What are the rest of these resources good for? Well, the guns are used in combat, and we're about to talk about the combat phase in just a few moments. Walkie-talkies, however, are used to purchase ally dice, which are these things right here. Allies are pretty stinking awesome because once you purchase it, it comes over here into this pool and you have it for the rest of the game. Additionally, it represents an extra die that you can roll in every single combat, in every single round for the rest of the game. So while they may be expensive, as you can see up here, they are definitely worth it. And as time goes on, they do get increasingly cheaper. So don't neglect purchasing ally dice because they can really help you out. As we're talking about resources, however, we do need to mention the golden rule, and that is if you are ever depleted of a certain resource, you can use health in order to represent that resource. For example, let's say that Blue here really wanted to get down here and make sure that they won this for whatever reason. He could, if he wanted to, use 2 health since they're out of fuel over here to go 1, 2, just like that. The caveat with that golden rule is, however, you have to have a depleted resource in order to choose to use a heart instead of that resource. If we had a couple left, he could not say, well, I'm going to use my hearts instead of using this so we can save it for next round. Let's just say that this is the board state after the movement phase. At the end of the movement phase, if any of the agents are in a town without any white hands, then, and there is an art project there, they can immediately claim that and they don't have to do any battle for it, which is a really cool thing. Because what that does is it gets them one closer to their objective. But at the same time, it also covers up the leftmost number that's over here in this red box, which is important because these are the numbers that determine the foundation of how strong the hand is in each of these different locations. So before this package goes over here, the base or foundational power of the hand is 6 plus however many agents are in the city. Later on in the game, if you have any hands over here, which we'll talk about in a few moments, that will also add to this number. But right now, it's 6 plus the number of agents here, so it's 9 and 8 respectively. But at the end of the movement phase, this package will come over here, and now the base is 8, so that makes this 11 and this 10. So as you reclaim projects over the course of the game, packages, missions, whatever you'd like to call it, the strength of the hand will get more dangerous. But the number of walkie-talkies that you have to spend to get allies goes down. The more effective you are at your mission, the more allies want to join your cause. So in the combat phase, you can choose whatever order you want to do your combats in, or if you want to combat at all. In this particular situation, it might be better for you to do this combat first because it's not going to affect the strength of the power over here. But if you do this combat and win, this will come over here, making this one a more difficult challenge. These two players will determine which of them is going to be the leader of the attack. And that just simply means that they're going to volunteer having to lose a health at the end of combat if they are not successful. They will both roll their respective dice plus any allied dice that you've already paid for. So let's go ahead and do that. And you see what you get. So we have 5, 10, 13, and you needed to get 8, 9, 10, 11. So that is successful. In successful combats, all the white hands are removed from the board, and you've cleared that city from danger. Now down here, these three will have to determine who the leader is going to be. Let's say that blue volunteers, and the other characters soundly say, "No way, Jose, because if you lose, we're going to lose the game." So let's say that better judgment wins the day, and Santa Claus over here says that he will become the leader. So he will roll his dice, yellow will roll theirs, and blue will roll theirs. And they see what happens. So we have 6, 9, 14, 15. They needed only 10. So what happens here? Both of these hand agents are removed from the board, and this package immediately comes back up here, and that will be the end of the combat phase because there are no more combats to be had. At this point, we would go to our end round phase, where you would check to see if any of the cities have 5 or more hand agents in them, and if they do, this comes out. Let's say that there were 5 over here. So all the hand agents would be removed from the city, and that lost city token would be added there. What this denotes is that no one can move through or to that city ever again. Additionally, if hand agents through card play have to be put out there in subsequent rounds, instead of going to the city, they come over here to this circle, and they will stack and start adding to the base power of the hand in all of the other combats. So it's pretty nasty. If your clue trail over here fires off and a package is supposed to go down here, it doesn't go down there, and the cards still trigger. So that's how you play the A.R.T project. Now, I do have to say that I just spent the last 4 days demoing this game, and I probably put in about 25 different demos over those 4 days, about 6 a day. And so this is something that I've had my head wrapped around for the last 4 days at Gen Con, and I had an absolute blast. I have already done a review of this over on the flip side, so it might already be out there that this is a very favorite cooperative game of mine. So I do have to say that right on the onset of my final thoughts here, because I can't keep a secret for very long. I toyed with the idea of acting like I didn't like this game and acting like this and acting like I was going to disagree with what Tom, Z, and Camilla said. but I can't do that because this game is just too freaking good. The only way, and I mean the only way that I disagree with any of what they said is that I think they were a little low on their ratings. We'll get to that in just a few moments, though. My final thoughts of the game, with using Gen Con's experiences, I did not have anybody in any of the demos that I ran leave thinking, whatever, it was all right. Most, if not all, of the people that were in my demos walked away saying that they had a really great time playing the game and they really enjoyed it. And many of them asked if it was available for purchase and then walked over to the booth and bought it. So that's the kind of game that this is. There's a lot of reasons why I think it hits well with people, and we're going to get into that with my pros and cons. But I do have to say on the very onset, this is a great game, and if you don't listen to anything else in this, you should at least think about picking this up because it's a great game. So my first pro is going to be this. You knew it was coming. Stop looking at me like that. Vincent Dutrait's artwork. I love this guy's artwork, and it's all over this game. He designed and did the maps, of which there are no less than 6. We'll talk about that in a few moments. He designed all of the character cards. He designed the minivan, all of this stuff, the backs of the cards, artwork that are on the front of the cards. It's all over this in a good way. I really think that this is a great looking game, and as I've always said, great looking games are simply more fun to play. So that's my first pro. I had to just get it out of the way because you knew it was coming. Vincent Dutrait's artwork knocks it out of the park once again. My second pro of the game is its play value. And I don't really necessarily want to call it replayability value because I think it does have that and we could definitely call it that. But I love the play value of it. It comes with no less than 6 different maps, 3 double-sided game boards, and each map has its own kind of nuance or number of nuances to the rules. And I think that's a really cool thing because, first of all, there are different levels of challenges that those maps might represent. So that's a cool thing. But there's also different configurations of how the cities are arranged on the boards. And that's another cool thing. So you have 6 different ways to play the game that don't really change the core mechanisms, but there are little nuances that make each of those different things feel different. So it's a really cool thing, in my opinion. My third pro for the game is that it takes care of business no matter how many players are playing the game. I think it's really good from 1 all the way up to 6. There's very small differences in the experience that you get from each of those different levels, and I've enjoyed all of them. The demos that I ran, except for solo, I didn't run any solo demos, but I ran 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 player games over the course of the weekend. I've personally played in those different player counts as well, including solo, and I can personally attest that it does a very good job in each of the different player levels, and I think equally so. The way that it handles the multiple player counts and how it really feels tight and it feels like it is the same kind of experience over all of those player counts is a really cool thing, and that's why it's another pro for me. Another pro for me were the multi-use cards that are here. I love the fact that you have basically an order of progression on one side of the card, and then you can also use those same cards as clues during the course of the game as well. I really thought that using symbols instead of some other kind of differentiating factor was a really cool thing. The fact that you really don't need, except for the rule book, there's no language dependency here at all. None whatsoever. You don't have to read names. You don't have to read anything. It's all symbols or shapes or colors. And I really, really enjoy that. And while I'm there, I think it's also cool that each of the different colors is associated with a different shape. So you aren't necessarily brown. You're the bishop. You're not necessarily green, you're a knight. You're not necessarily orange, you are the pawn. So I really like that fact of it. So the graphic design of the game is also really good. Not necessarily the artwork. We already talked about that, and it's a grand slam. But the graphic design also works really well with it as well. So got to be a pro in my book. Another pro for me is the fact that it does not take a very long time to play. While it's not a filler game, in my opinion, I think that this is a regular game. It's not a showcaser that's going to take 2 to 3 hours. It's not a filler game that'll take 20 to 30 minutes in between a couple of those bigger games. But it is one of those kind of normal board games that's going to take about an hour, no matter how many players you have in the game, because games do tend to go a little slow in the beginning as people are trying to figure out how they're going to work all of those things into the mission phase, how they're going to work out communication, all that kind of thing. It goes a little slow, but about round 2 or 3, it really starts to pick up, and the game really moves along at a pretty quick clip. But I will also say that it does not take a long time to play. Most of the games that I was able to demo, we were done in an hour because that's how much time we had allotted for them. But most of the games finished before we had to call time on them, and that was with teaching. And finally, I really enjoyed the resource management of this game. I really thought it was a great thing, and the fact that the golden rule existed where you can use your hearts instead of a depleted resource really just made it all that more tight, I guess you could say, because while you had the opportunity to use your health in place of some of these things, you're using your health and you're getting closer and closer to defeat if you're doing that. But it's one of those things where you have to kind of play with a balance in mind instead of an optimal ideology to win. You play with a balance. I'm going to do something that might be a little bit crazy this turn, and we'll try to counteract that craziness next turn with some more reserved play. I really liked that tension of balance in the game, and it really comes down to the resource management and how you play your cards and what resources you have to use and what resources are given to you by those cards. And I like how those things really work well together, so it had to be a pro for me there too. My only con of the game is, and this is going to be weird, it's going to be awkward, but it's dice rolling. Now, don't get me wrong. I liked it. I love dice rolling. I still love dice rolling. But dice hate me. And this is one of those games that could happen. You could lay out the best plans ever, and the dice simply don't show up. Now, there are a couple of ways that we didn't talk about in the game, but you can mitigate the dice rolling by using cards out of your clue track to re-roll dice. You can use a card that has 2 to re-roll 2 different dice. You can use a 1 to re-roll a die 1 time. So you can mitigate the dice that way. We did mention using guns in combat. They can raise your combat score by 2. So there's ways to mitigate the dice rolling, but it still just kind of falters sometimes. And so I did have people, it was a small amount of people, because many were able to come at this and have that kind of very lighthearted nature about the dice rolling. But some of them did say that, wow, that those dice rolls were brutal. And that's just the way it goes. But I will say this is a small con, and it was a small con for them. They still walked away having a great time. They still had a good thing. They had a good time playing the game, but they had that thing, wow, those dice rolls were brutal. That's a slight con for me, but I think it works well with the theme, and it's the only thing I could really come up with as a con for this game, and it's a very small, minor con at that. Now, with all that being said, my rating of the game is a strong 9 out of 10. I know Z gave it an 8, and I know Camilla gave it an 8, and I know Tom gave it a 7.5, but I really, really enjoy this game. And I have to say, I'm giving it a 9 because of that specific fact. It might not be for you, but it really, really is for me. I super enjoy this game, and it made working all those hours at Gen Con go by just like that, because I loved being part of watching people enjoy this game and their level of excitement. People were cheering when those dice rolls came through. They were stricken when they didn't. And you could just see the excitement. You could see how much they were enjoying the game. And I was so happy to be a part of that. And I just loved it. And that really kind of solidified this game, in my opinion, as that 9 out of 10, because it drew a lot of different kinds of people around the table, and they all had a great time. That, my friends, in my opinion, is a great game. So that is my review of the art project from the op. Thanks for joining me. We'll see you guys and gals on the flip side. Take care.